team, assemble!
It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carey, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, we are back. It is the unofficial 40 podcast from Soonerscoop.com, and the entire gang, except for Bob, is here. Bob is dealing with a tree that has fallen on his house, and it's his anniversary tonight. So happy anniversary, Bob and Brittany.
100%.
I don't know if we're allowed to say both of those names, but
it is.
Okay.
I think we are. We talked about it on the radio today, so we're good.
oh, okay.
He tweeted it too.
He's so private. I don't know if he appreciates the fact that that information is out there. So welcome back, boys. Thank you for allowing me to be on one of your shows. I'm just I'm so happy to be a part of one of the broadcasts.
We didn't approve it, so I don't know.
We are here. Lots to get into today, as we've already made a pact before the show started that we will never get on a submarine together. So you don't have to worry about that. Those people are dead now, right? They've got to be dead. They ran out of air?
I think that they technically are supposed to still have oxygen
Are
left,
they?
but I think it's like
It's a few
they're
hours.
in the waning hours of
And there's no way to get them.
demise.
There's no way to like.
Surely they've searched the Titanic to make sure that the driver just didn't go hey, I bet I can fit through here, and he just got stuck, right?
No, I don't think so.
I think it was just a
I think
malfunction
the
with
driver,
this submarine.
but the driver's an idiot. I don't know if you saw the 60 Minutes story they did
I
on it
saw
a
what
year
it
and a half ago.
Looked like when they put it together, how they turned the screws and
It
bolted
looked like
together.
it was basically put together for a home project.
well, and the steering is like a
Joystick.
It's an
it's
or like
off-brand-
a
it's
remote
off-brand
control.
Xbox controller, basically.
The whole thing is it's a nightmare scenario. It really is.
And people paid $250,000 to go into that nightmare.
Yeah, on the 60 Minutes story, they got lost for 2 hours. The guy didn't know where they were.
Oh my God.
And they still got on this thing.
Yeah, that sounds.
It's insane.
And the
Ridiculous.
stepson went to Blink 182 to cope. That was the
Which
best
is
part.
kind of a power move. It was only
Yeah.
his stepdad, though. He's the. I saw somebody point this out on Twitter that it is.
He had to know if he was in the will or not, though.
Well, exactly. It's notable that his mom was a gold digger that found this billionaire to marry
Right.
her. And
Obviously an idiot.
He's just trying to be. He's trying to play his role.
Yeah. All I know is I will not be going on a submarine while I'm in Jamaica next week.
Yeah, that would not be advisable.
Cross that off the list.
You'll just be in the middle of a hurricane.
yeah. Hopefully not.
They say that it's just a tropical storm, but things can change overnight. It could go back to a hurricane really fast.
Well, maybe I won't come back. Maybe I'll just be there forever.
Save us a lot of money if that happens. Anyway, we've had some commitments yesterday. By the way, welcome, Josh. Welcome to the program.
It's my perfect time to come in. We started talking recruiting. We were being very topical, and we all know that is absolutely not my wheelhouse.
Well, Bob's not here to talk about kids.
You had some thoughts before we started. You said something to the effect of they kind of deserve this.
That was. It's amazing when Eddie can just so perfectly put it in a couple of words. Exactly my thoughts. So
That's
that
right.
was. But yeah, that whole thing. I can't. We were talking before. I can't think of a lot of more just mind-bending ways to die. That's got to just be a mental toll that is hard to quantify.
Well, it's kind of become that thing, too. I think Eddie first noticed it out of all of us and put something on the board, along with certain bowling coaches.
One of the greatest stories in the history of the Lufkin Daily County News or whatever. The
headline
bowling
is
story.
all
Yeah,
time.
the headline, from the headline to the quote.
Well, you got to say exactly what
actual
this
story.
is. Don't bury the lead here.
I guess, former assistant of the Stephen F. Austin women's bowling team is alleged, and I guess now it's come out that he had an affair with one of the players, which is just kind of fun to begin with. And then he gave some legendary quotes about how
college
this
kid,
isn't
right?
against the law.
When he's married to
Some
the head
ethics.
coach.
Yeah, and the husband of the head coach. Yeah, that's a little bit of a footnote there.
And they're the best bowling team in the country.
Yeah, they
apparently.
win ships.
They win national titles.
They win national titles, so like you can't argue against the
Stephen
guys.
F. Austin is a bowling superpower.
Women's, yeah.
This would be like if Kirby Smart's wife joined the Georgia's coaching staff and then started dating Stetson Bennett.
And we don't know that to be not true either. So maybe she is.
They'd be more age appropriate than this situation, I'm sure. Because he's like 30, Stetson Bennett.
I'm just guessing
That's-
that
oh, yeah,
the women's roster for the Stephen F. Austin bowling team. I guess I need to take a look at the roster to see what we're working with, but it doesn't seem like that would be fit with a bunch of attractives, you know?
I've seen some bowling on television. It's not all unattractive women.
I'm not going to comment on this.
But does the coach punish the player? Does she not put her in the rotation now? Like,
She's got to be in the portal by now.
She's in the portal as well.
I would, if I were the coach, I would go into the portal. I would get the hell out. I would never want to show my face to that team again.
My favorite part of that story, well, is the reporter that, like you guys mentioned, he was writing like Chamber of Commerce stories the day before, and he starts getting those quotes, and he's like, holy shit, I get to write this thing. But secondarily is just the idea that the husband seemed like, even though he was dragging his wife's name through the mud, putting in a terrible embarrassment on not only their marriage, but their work, but like was still like, but she didn't treat me with enough respect. Like,
Yeah.
dude, stop.
There's some
You're
animosity.
making it so much worse.
There's some animosity in the home. The quote about
That was our marriage vows.
There's not a law
through
saying
sickness
I'm going to go
and
to jail
health
for this.
unless you treat me with disrespect.
that's right, unless you can't make it to the 10th frame. I love the story.
All right, we are here. We've had all kinds of craziness in the office. George, I have to keep him from putting together arcade games right now. We've got the arcade games. It's going to be kind of part set, part just kind of a way to relax. But what do we get? We got NBA Jam. We got Galaga / Ms. Pac-Man.
Which I will be the best in the office at Galaga. That is...
There's
I'm
no
really
chance in
good.
hell. There's no chance in hell. I've been playing that way longer than you. And then I
I'm
think we
good.
got Star Wars. Like it
That one
has
looks
all the
fun.
Star Wars games. It's very tall, apparently. It's a bunch. And here's the thing: FedEx, they suck. FedEx is the worst company that has ever existed. We have new carpet. We have to tear everything apart to put in new carpet this next week. So I don't know that. Here's the thing: the YouTube videos are very popular, but they're also very not popular. Like people. And Josh, like we've talked about this a lot, and I've talked about this with the guys. Like we're trying to reach a lot of people that consume media in different ways, and I think what we've learned on the boards is some people only have one way that they consume media, and they get very angry when we diversify our media offerings.
We've had people mad about me posting a link to Woke or The Scoop and stuff, and I'm like, I get that it's different. And Carey, you and I talked about this when it happened. Like, I knew this was going to come up a little bit. But it's like, it's the same as a normal story. You just click the link and it's there.
Right,
like,
yeah.
it doesn't, I get that it's one more step, but we're talking about clicking your finger here, right? Like, that we can overcome this mountain. But
I just
with,
don't
with
know.
the
Like,
other
I
stuff,
don't know if you're on the internet, how you're not connected to Twitter, and you like sports. Like, how are you not connected to Twitter? How do you not have like, I saw the thread about people complaining that Sam Spiegelman put up a link to a tweet with some news that then linked to a story, which I get it. It's kind of funny to complain about that. But at the same time, like all of us, if we see that, it's not a big deal. It's just, it's kind of like, I've always said this to everybody, like, make something a part of your life until it's normal. Like, when you post a story, post a tweet linking the story. And then I'll send out a newsletter. Like when we had breaking news, like we had this week with Kevin Sperry. It's like it went out on so many channels, but it initially starts as a story on the site, and we all worked our asses off to get that story on the site. But then we put a tweet out, then we send out a newsletter. We put it on Facebook. Like, it's just the way that media works now is you have to put it in so many different areas because everybody consumes media differently.
Yeah, and you don't want to miss that window. You don't want that person that would have got it on YouTube or would have got it within the podcast, which obviously we've got to talk about the Kevin Sperry thing because we haven't done that within the pod boundaries. I mean, we have to acknowledge that too. But it's eye-opening for me too, Carey, like how different people have very different ways about it. Now, I will say some of our members have found workarounds for the YouTube where they can just listen to the audio, and that's cool, man. If that's what does it, I think we still get credit for that being a play. Like, I think it all still works as I don't know if it's a view. I don't know how exactly that would.
And to be honest, even if we don't, it's fine. I mean, we want you to consume our
100%.
stuff the way that it's consumed, and like your subscription, it may not, everything we do may not be behind a paywall. But you just have to realize, like, you pay us $10 a month. We're going to put content out there that you will enjoy. And I'm not saying it's a donation, but essentially, I think we have, thousands and thousands of people that are okay with that. Like, we rarely get anyone that says, why is it that I mean, it happens, trust me. How is it I pay $10 a month and I can get, other people can get your stuff on YouTube? Like, it's just the way it works, man. You want us to stay in business. You want us to keep producing content. You want us to break news and stories and hire people like George Stoya. Like, it just all goes hand in hand.
Oh, 100%. And that's something I don't think people think about when they say, the people that do come and say, well, why did you put that on YouTube? Anybody can watch that. Or why do you guys do the podcast? Why do you put information in there?
George Stoya.
The podcast was a big part of why we could get The Office. The Office is a big part of why we can start to do all this new live video stuff and all the stuff that we want to do through YouTube. And then through that, you make more money. Okay, and then we can hire. Again, it's part of it is why we can hire someone like George. And we can, we can keep adding features, we can keep adding writers, like we can become a bigger and better site by spreading out our reach and getting into as many things as we possibly can.
If I can chime in here, I don't know if people realize how much money you can make on YouTube. I mean, that's like everybody's doing that now is putting their podcasts and shows
children
on YouTube.
are millionaires that do toy reviews
ridiculous.
on YouTube.
Yeah. I mean,
Mr.
Guys,
Beast is worth $1 billion. I mean, more than $1 billion.
My girls come to me and want to start a YouTube show, and I'm like, A, yes. B, let's come up with a format. And they've not come up with a format I'm happy with yet, but we are workshopping it so that I can live off of their, pre-pubescent stardom.
You're raising a couple of Cavenders, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's what we're going for.
Josh
here.
turning into Baby Gronk's dad would be an amazing full circle story.
All those gymnastics that you spent last night doing, I mean, get that stuff up on YouTube tastefully.
Like my girls are going to be like baby Livy,
that
I guess,
Livy
because they're
Dunn.
both gymnasts. I mean, we're going for the Dunn route, so it's going to be perfect.
Hey, man, she showed up to Omaha, and LSU's all of a sudden started winning. I don't
Is she
think
in
it's
Omaha?
a
Livy Dunn's in
coincidence.
Omaha?
Yeah, oh yeah.
You see the photo of her getting the old guy
with
getting
the
the autograph.
Accosted by the old guy. I would
that
like to hope
that looked
that,
completely normal.
I would hope that is
and I'm sure.
I need an autograph for my grandson. I hope that's what it is.
That's another thing. Like, there's a thread on the board right now about hottest softball players, and like people have like reported this thread like to us, and I'm just like, what do you want me to do? Like, if a like in this age of name, image, likeness, like Livy Dunns of the world are out there, like all these softball players are going to be posting pictures of themselves in bikinis. Like, that's what young women do now. It's like, do you want me to do you want to just ignore that? It's just like, it's not my thing. I'm not going and searching that out. And I'm sure they're, you can call those guys creepy that are on that, that post that are, oogling those girls or whatever. But like, it's not illegal. Like, I don't know what your problem is with it. Like,
I don't even click on those.
girls do
threads.
that.
Not the thread, like the reporting of the thread. I don't even
Yeah.
click on it. I don't really care.
That seems on
I
brand
know,
for you.
and then I have to deal with it. Eddie, it doesn't just go away. Like, it still has to be addressed, and it'll be like a week later, I'm like, shit, I didn't see this, so I will deal with that. But, yeah, that is, again, like, if these girls, like, if this was something where, like, guys are, like, creeping in the bushes and, like, taking pictures, okay, cool, yep, needs to be removed. They're putting it on their Instagram for the entire world to see. Like, this isn't some secret.
Yeah, they're not, like, judging people for looking at it. They're putting it out there for people to look at. And
Exactly.
they're saying, you know what, if this gets me some money or an endorsement or free swimsuits or whatever, they're fine with it. You need to be fine with it. Anyway, that's a rant I didn't expect to get into. So, yeah,
Let's just debut the new segment then. As part of Pride Month, we're going to do the 10 hottest
football players.
athletes at
10
OU.
hottest football players.
Yeah.
Are you?
I thought you were about to segue into the Enjoy Vision.
Well, I could see him.
Yeah,
I know
great,
that.
Great vision.
Well, this
yeah.
I could see him.
This looking at Instagram segment was brought to you by Enjoy Vision.
I'm sure that they're happy about that.
Look, they're. I'm telling you this. Enjoy Vision would be happy to. I think would be happy to sponsor, a softball player in their swimsuit. I mean, say, look at me. And if they got money
Which
for
softball player is this?
I don't know who. I mean, Alex Duraco's gone, so I think the hottest one is no longer with us. Well, she's not
Now,
dead. She's
now
just-
you've crossed the line.
Yeah, now I've crossed the line. Davis Bevel's going to come for my ass now. Anyway, no, it's the Enjoy Vision. Look ahead. And Eddie Radosevich, you can scan Instagram and look at hot girls all you want because you have perfect vision.
That's right. I do have perfect vision now, and that's because of Enjoy Vision, which is the best laser vision center in Oklahoma City, and it's not even close. Combination of mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care, which was life-changing for me. Now, this is what you need to do. You need to go to enjoywithme.com. That is the letter NJOY withme.com. Use the promo code U40 for $400 off LASIK. That is enjoywithme.com. Enjoy Vision. This is where you LASIK.
Okay, so we've had a lot of stuff happen this week. We mentioned the Kevin Sperry stuff. That was a fun day around the office. Then you have 2 commitments last night. But I don't know where, Josh. Let's start with this question. Maybe like, where is Oklahoma? I know everybody was freaking, as usual, because you didn't have 50 commitments coming out of ChampUBBQ. But is OU on the verge of making their big recruiting run now? And that has nothing to do with Kevin Sperry, but, just the 2 commitments yesterday.
It very much feels like it. And I will say, before I get into it, I was listening to a national guy talking today about, recruiting, and he was talking about the way people react to summertime commitments. Like, oh, that guy's going to decommit. Oh, and it's usually the school's rival. Like, Florida's on a big run right now, and I'm sure Georgia fans are like, oh, summer commitments don't mean anything, yada, yada, yada. By and large, most summer guys stick. But what's funny to me is I think about OU fans, and I very rarely think of them saying, oh, these Texas commitments don't matter, blah, blah, blah. It's much more Oklahoma fans, like, negging on themselves. Like, even with 2 commitments this week and the clear signs that they are trending up in a big way with a lot of big-time guys, there's still this, like, waiting for the shoe to drop feeling. And I don't understand it. I feel like it's a little, not singular to Oklahoma, but it is very pronounced sometimes, though, OU fans. So maybe a little self-reflection before you take in what I'm about to say. But the rest of it, yeah. I mean, you start off with the 2 commitments yesterday at 6 o'clock and 6:01. James Nesta goes at 6. Dozier Zakama goes at 6:01. Nesta's the big linebacker from North Carolina. Oklahoma offered him, I believe, on early May. I mean, it really hasn't been heavily involved for that long, but I know Ted Roof saw the tape, liked him. Miguel Chavis went out to North Carolina, had a look at him, and they offered him. And this is a guy goes about 6'5", 205, very natural edge rusher. Talking to him for the story that we ran, he talked about just being at his most comfortable, kind of coming off the edge, turning the corner, and that shows up on tape. But he's absolutely a guy that's super interesting. And, with Dozier Zakama, we were there at camp the day he got offered. And, we got plenty of video of him and watching him. But what I thought was really interesting is that relationship that's there between he and Emmett Jones. Because I know basically the day before, Emmett Jones got in contact with him and said, hey, come up to camp. We want to see you. And Dozie comes up and earns his offer. Had an offer from Tech where his brother Eric played. And And I think almost from the moment that offer happened, it was almost certainly going to be Oklahoma because, guys, he's still going through his official visit. Like that hasn't, I think actually maybe just wrapping up or something like that. But he took a little while, had a little delay getting to campus. So he committed while still going through his visit. So I think he knew that was going to happen. And he's a big, long receiver that brings a lot to the table. I like him as kind of, again, one of those guys we talked about that Emmett Jones has a good track record with.
And for people that don't remember, his brother was really good. I mean, like, I thought he was one of the best Tech receivers in the last 5 years, easily.
He was once or twice all Big 12 guy, wasn't he? I'm almost certain he was once, but I think he might have been on two.
I want to say that maybe he had like
first team in 2020 and second team in 2021.
Touchdowns in Norman when they played here. But I mean, I just remember him just destroying OU secondary, which wasn't common to just him. But
that's a pretty long list of guys.
But I mean, you're talking about his brother averaged almost 16 yards a catch for his career at Texas Tech. I mean, good player, and he comes in at like 6'1" and some change and like 209 at the NFL Combine. Eddie, you were there with him that day. I'd say Dozy's 6'3" and some change, and
if anything,
probably
if you want to hit him for anything, he's probably still a little. I don't want to use the word frail, light as far as just what he could end up being, but the frame. I mean, he looks like somebody that he will be able to carry that weight when he does eventually, get bigger. Obviously, going into his senior year, and I think that. Just watching him catch balls with Kevin Sperry up at camp, very natural, just as far as the way that he receives the football. I think that was one of the things, on that, because I think we were standing there, Josh, when he did that, they were doing basically the long, you run long, and you're just catching balls over your shoulder. It was very natural. It stuck out to me that he was such a big body and him catching the football that easily.
That, and I would say the one that stood out to me, Eddie, is when they were kind of throwing the ball. I wouldn't call it a back shoulder because it's a leaping catch, but when they're trying to show the guys, kind of show their body control, that kind of stuff, that was real easy for him. Like there's a lot of very smooth movement to his game is the way I would say that. Kind of almost reminds me of like a I don't know, like maybe like a bigger Jazz Reynolds. Like if I'm trying to think of a good way to say that. I know that's not gonna. Everybody loves my comparisons. I know because they're not every guy's not a first round pick that I'm talking about. But I just mean from that kind of easy burst and kind of big long guy that can make a lot of catches outside of his body and those sort of things. So I like Dozy. I think this is interesting because Oklahoma is still heavily involved with a couple of other big-time receivers, very different types of players. We can get into one of them, Terry Bussey and the ChampUBBQ and his visit.
First off, let's talk about James Nesta, kind of what OU has there in that commitment from yesterday.
Yeah, like I said, I talked about it a little while ago, but I mean, he is a guy. I think my understanding is they like him as a micro will. They even mentioned, and again, it's almost a birthright. I think David Stone has been mentioned with the Cheetah, but they've talked to James Nesta about playing that position as well. So there's some versatility to his game. And we also have to give some credit to Skip Johnson and his bunch. Obviously, Nesta's a baseball player, plans to do that in Oklahoma, and he talked about it in the story that I referenced earlier, was saying that OU was the first school he'd been to that he really believed that they were going to find a way for him to play baseball. Like that there was a clear plan in place, almost hourly. This is what you'll do, during spring football. This is what you'll do during, baseball workouts while football's going. That kind of stuff. So there was just a clear itemization of what he had to do, and Skip Johnson and his staff was, have the credibility of saying, this is what we did with Kyler Murray, and it worked out pretty well for everybody.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think that just the implementation or the presentation of what they have in place as far as what they want these guys to do, what will be asked of them, just really having a blueprint for what it's going to be like in tackling two sports, because you don't see it too often anymore. And I do think that it's going to be interesting to see, how that I guess goes over in a way with somebody like Taylor Tatum, who we'll talk about, the number one running back in the country, who is an exceptional baseball player as well. So I'm kind of excited, though. I mean, the guy's, I want to see him pitch. 6'5", 205. He looks like I was just watching some Perfect Game videos last night of him pitching at Perfect Game showcases and stuff, and he looks like somebody that definitely has a presence out there on the mound. And, I think that's something that we kind of hit on.
Right-hander?
The what?
Right-hander?
Yeah, right-hander. He's a big old boy. He brings it. Something that, I think is certainly going to start coming to the forefront, too, is, everybody's talked about SEC recruiting on the football side of things. Just look at 3 of the 4 teams that are left in the NCAA tournament with LSU and Florida. The SEC is obviously a very strong baseball conference, and I think that, that's going to be something that they have on the table as well when you start talking about recruiting somebody is, hey, you're not just going to be playing SEC football, you're going to be playing SEC baseball. So it will be interesting to see how all that kind of comes together over the next couple years.
All right, well, you guys have danced around him a little bit, but, news on Tatum is that, down to Oklahoma and USC. I know you guys were kind of talking about some things before the pod started, just about, maybe there's some things coming out of USC that they're a little worried about where things stand.
Yeah, you're hearing stuff like it's very USC was responsible for the whole Lincoln Riley and his staff were the ones that were responsible for all that scheduling for Kyler Murray, and they made it work. And I think there is something to that, but the fact that USC clearly wants it out there and is presenting it and trying to make, like Skip Johnson didn't have anything to do with it. It was just Lincoln Riley's show. It's kind of like, that feels like you're a little worried about what's happening here. Like, it feels like maybe there's some writing on the wall. And, guys, it's interesting now because it feels like things that we've been talking about for a month are starting to come to play here a little bit. The baseball side of this being a much bigger deal than I think a lot of people realize. Now everybody's starting to talk about the baseball thing. Secondarily, he talked, and I believe it was with
real quick on that.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie, you cover baseball, but
Yeah,
Kyler was never a starter, right? When
Yeah, he was starting.
Yeah. Was he starting when he played baseball?
Yeah, and that 2019 team could have been really good, but they went to 19. They went to the Tallahassee Regional, but Kyler and Steele Walker were out.
Yeah.
So they, kind of lost 2 power bats. But yeah, he started in left field. I don't know off the top of my head how many games he started, but he was around there quite a bit. I do think
I remember
that,
but I guess I'm thinking about like that weekend when he went to Austin or whatever. During spring practice or something.
It was
like that.
It was spring game, and they were playing Texas. So he played in the spring game,
and they flew him back and forth.
It was in Norman.
It was in Norman.
It was in Norman.
Okay.
But he was still doing. He played in the spring game, and then went over and played the baseball game that night.
Okay.
And I think he might have just DH'd in that game, if I remember correctly.
But yeah, if you're talking about ultimately who's responsible, it's the baseball coach that has to allow for that to happen. And to not be butthurt, that you're not at practice as much as the other guys.
Sure, because when spring ball hits, you're probably going to be at football.
Yeah.
And especially if you're the starting quarterback. It will be interesting and I know that Reggie Willits has played a big role, even though he wasn't necessarily around with Kyler. He's played a big role as far as presenting what they want. Ryan Gaines, the director of baseball ops, was around and very close to Kyler. Mm-hmm. They worked kind of hand in hand in making a schedule that would work for him. And, it's a big ask for somebody to play 2 sports that seemingly go on at the same time. And especially with fall baseball, you're not going to be around very much.
Yeah.
You just aren't.
Kyler played 27 games in 2017 and 51 games in 2018.
2018. So it was 2018.
2018 he played
postseason.
51.
So it would have been spring of 2018 when he did that with playing in the spring game and then going over and playing the 3-game series against Texas.
But he was. I'm just trying to get this straight. Was he drafted the year before he started as a quarterback? That summer,
he was drafted that summer before.
and then he
would have been
started
drafted
the next year.
in May or June of 2018.
Yeah.
Played the 2018
Because I remember being
football
at the
season.
Caravan. That was like Bob Stoops' last Caravan, I think, when he was drafted.
No,
No,
Lincoln
because
was.
Lincoln would have already taken over.
Yeah,
in
'cause
No,
2018.
that's right. Yeah. I don't know why that's in my head. I guess that was the golf national championship I'm thinking of.
It was. That was 100% up in Tulsa.
Yeah.
At the Schusterman Center. We watched it with Bob in that conference room.
Yeah, he and Mike Houck were sitting
Which
there
was
on the phone.
even stranger because I believe that was on like a Monday or a Tuesday, and then Bob would, quote unquote, retire on Friday.
Yeah.
It was like that week.
Now, Mario Williams never played baseball for OU, right?
No, he went through fall workouts, I believe,
That's right.
but never actually
shit.
played.
A tree just fell over at my house.
Oh, really? Well, call Bob. He can probably get over there and cut it down.
I have to go.
All right.
I'm not kidding. It's fallen over.
Oh no. From the wind, like just now, we had some storms just blow through Norman.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Really? Hold. Holy crap.
All right.
I guess it probably got rickety during Saturday night, and then that initial gust coming through today probably did it in.
Well, here's the thing. You're going to finish the pod and hit stop, and then I'll come back and get
As
it uploaded
long as
and
we're
everything.
recording.
It's recording. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we
All
can
right.
do that.
There you go.
Well, thanks for joining us, Carey. It's back to our show.
God,
It's
sorry,
just
Carey.
the-
You thought you got to join us.
I'm joining Bob in the My Tree Fell Over Club. So he just got his.
Oh,
release.
shit.
That's a
man.
massive tree.
All right, guys. I'll turn it over to you guys.
All right, best of luck. Yeah, so like the baseball stuff is really interesting with James Nesta. Obviously, Josh, do you want to just kind of segue this into Taylor Tatum, which we were kind of hinting at, obviously talking about just as far as, he's the number one running back in the country. You're starting to, like, if there's one big, storyline that's coming out of the ChampUBBQ weekend, it kind of is what DeMarco Murray is doing, is it not? When you throw in the visit with Taylor Tatum, when you throw in Caden Durham and the talk that's coming out of Duncanville now with the star running back, and then obviously Xavier Robinson, who was on his official visit last week during the camp.
Guys, you talked 6 weeks ago. That running back situation looked concerning. And it's crazy the ebbs and flows of it, because probably January, February, you're like, holy cow, Oklahoma's going to have their pick. It's going to be Caden Durham, Stacey Gage, Taylor Tatum. Like, it's going to be one of these, two of these guys. It's going to be incredible. And then, James Peoples is part of that. James Peoples goes to Ohio State. Things start to fall apart with Stacey Gage. We all know now that really was more of an OU decision, the way they decided to move with that. And it felt like OU was kind of letting things slip with Xavier Robinson. Eddie, even that day we were there, I was kind of up in the air on how I felt about that. It just kind of felt like, oh, maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. I just wasn't sure. But to see what DeMarco is possibly putting together in this running back room, Durham and Tatum are two of the top three running backs in the state of Texas that, if Oklahoma can close this deal, are not going to Texas, A&M, LSU, any of the other traditional powers that recruit that area of Texas in general. And then you throw in Xavier Robinson, who I had somebody who saw him at like a practice or a scrimmage the other day and sent me a picture of him, and was like, who's going to tackle this guy? Who wants to get in his way? And you're like, that's a coach that knows that players are not going to want to be part of that. So it is really impressive. And I mean, Taylor Durham, I've already put in a prediction for him. I think Oklahoma's in great shape there. He's already, sounds like he has postponed his LSU visit that he was supposed to take this weekend. I know our guy at our LSU site, Billy Embody, has reported that. Apparently it's being pushed back into the season. There's a part of me that thinks that's just wishful thinking from LSU, hoping that they can kind of regain some momentum. But it sounds like Oklahoma pretty much all but closed the door last weekend. I think they did an outstanding job with him. Taylor Tatum, guys, I really thought OU was in great shape, and then he took that USC official, and it was like, oh no, it might be all USC. This might be a really tough hill for Oklahoma to climb. But man, they did an outstanding job. Really, again, like we talked about with Nesta, did a great job explaining to him how baseball could be part of his schedule, how they could make that all work with class, with football practices, with spring ball and baseball, like all all the minutia that they have to go through. And, I know, Eddie, you mentioned Ryan Gaines being a big part of that. But also, and I've said it a few times, and I don't want to take credit away from DeMarco. He clearly did a great job as well, has really bonded with Tatum's family. And I talked about that earlier, that's the thing that a lot of people weren't talking about, because it was something mentioned to me a couple of times a month ago, and then I heard it again during one of OU's camp sessions was, if this was just the parents' decision, he would have committed to Oklahoma 2 months ago. Sure. So I think the fact that they're now getting Taylor moving in that direction is really crucial.
Okay, summer's here. It's hot outside. You got a lot of stuff going on. I have a tree falling in my yard right now, and sometimes you don't have time to get dinner, to make dinner, and it's just easiest to do it at home, and that's why you want to check out primeshrimp.com, Prime shrimp.com. Great selection of shrimp for you. It's restaurant quality. It's easy. You just put it in boiling water. In less than 10 minutes, you got a restaurant quality meal right there at home. So all you got to do is throw that bag away. There's really no muss, no fuss. Easy to do. Go check them out. Use our promo code U40, and you'll get 25% off your order of $50 or more, and that allows you to get a bunch of different kinds. You can get the New Orleans barbecue. You can get the French Quarter Alfredo, one of my personal favorites, the lemon and cracked black pepper combination. That is really good as well. Or you get the Cajun style, Louisiana shrimp boil, the signature seasoning, all to choose from. And you can go check it out, and you get $50 or more. You'll get 25% off that order using the promo code U40. So go check out our good friends at primeshrimp.com. Great sponsor of the podcast. Been with us for a long, long time. And support those guys for making this possible. And check them out at primeshrimp.com.
Well, and I know there's been a lot of talk, too, Josh, about, taking 3 running backs and what that means for the class. But it seems like all 3 kind of bring something different to the table. I think you compared Taylor to, I think, Joe Mixon Light, I think is what you said in board chat. You've got Durham, who's obviously a speedster type guy. And then Xavier Robinson, he looks like an H-back to me. So it's like they kind of all 3 bring something different.
As far as Robinson goes, is that more of a H-back type role than saying you're a running back?
It would be interesting to know if there is some aspect of that and kind of the inner workings of Jeff Lebby's mind. Like he sees like, oh, we could do some really interesting stuff with Xavier Robinson. I'm sure that is not part of the recruiting pitch.
Yeah.
Because that's what Robinson wants to do, and he wants to be a running back. And obviously with the success he's had, he has every right to want to do that. But again, I think it's understanding that these 3 guys, as talented as they are, you're probably going to lose one of them in a year or two. Just the portal being what it is, carries being, as tough to come by as they are in a backfield that's still going to have Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk and, some of the and a guy like Dalen Smothers that I think is tremendously talented. Like, you're going to lose some of these guys. So take 1 or 2 extra that you're not sure you need now that are going to come around. And again, I think in almost any scenario, you can find a good complement between the 2 backs. I mean, whether it's, kind of the old cliche thunder and lightning with Durham and Robinson, like that's easy to write. But Tatum, George, I've kind of come to that Mixon thing here lately, but Tatum as a receiver and his ability in the open field, but being a big, sturdy guy like he is, there's some comp there. And I'm not saying he's Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's one of the more unique running backs I've ever covered. But I think there is a lot there that he could be used in some similar ways.
As far as, I get there's just so many guys to get into from over the weekend. And it seems like, and obviously so, I always chuckle when, everybody wants the news about, was it a good visit? Was it a bad visit? They're usually all pretty good. I mean, these guys are going to new experiences for the first time. There's going to be some type of positive that comes away from it, and barely any negatives, unless somebody gets in trouble while on campus, and that usually doesn't happen. Which way do you want to go? Do you want to stay on the offensive side of the ball? Because we could talk about Terry Bussey, or we could go to the defensive side of the ball just as easily.
I think maybe you just wrap the offensive guys, because I know what everybody wants to get to, and we'll save that carrot closer to the end, we'll taunt everybody a little bit. But, I mean, you got a few offensive linemen to go over. Obviously, Samaj Jones, the quarterback, being there.
Sure.
And, Terry Bussey is obviously huge news as well.
Samaj Jones is really interesting because we haven't talked about him a whole lot. There wasn't a whole lot of buzz about him coming in, and it's probably because Oklahoma already has the 2024, quote-unquote, the quarterback in Michael Hawkins. But we could very easily see Samaj Jones be a part of this class, correct?
Yes, that honestly is my expectation. I know he went to West Virginia the week before Oklahoma, and apparently that visit went very, very well. I think it's a question for him of, do I go to West Virginia that's clearly on shaky ground, but I'm going to be the guy? I mean, I'm going to be a big deal in that class. They're going to try to build that class around me. I'll be the focal point. Or do I go to Oklahoma that has all this track record of quarterback, is moving to the SEC, but they already have a guy in my class. They've got a 5-star of the year in front of me. They've got a big-time guy already committed behind me. How does he look at that? But my understanding is very much, and again, it's something that I think a lot of fans maybe wouldn't look at it this way, but when you talk to these guys, they're competitors, man. He's like, I'm going to go in and win the job. That is my read on how he sees it. I'm going to go beat Michael Hawkins. I'm going to go beat Jackson Arnold. That's the way he looks at it. And I Oklahoma's not stupid. They're going to give him every opportunity to do so and prove himself right. But, I think I think that's going to go Oklahoma's way. I have not put in a forecast yet because I'm not that confident about it. But I do think there's I would say a better than even money chance that Oklahoma is his eventual choice.
The quarterback situation is going to be fascinating to watch over the next few years because obviously you have Jackson Arnold waiting. Kevin Sperry now is in Oklahoma, and he seems very locked in with OU. And then you've got these two quarterbacks in the 2024 class. I don't know. I mean, obviously not all these guys are going to end up staying at OU. I mean, Samaj Jones may not even end up at OU, but it's going to be – I mean, Jeff Lebby has totally restocked that room considering where it was a year ago. It's pretty crazy to think about.
I think it's also kind of notable, too, just how far – I don't want to say his reach goes because obviously I think everybody around here knows what the previous quarterback guru, what he was known for, a very, very good quarterbacks coach. I think it also speaks to just how damn good and how respected Jeff Lebby is in a sense.
Well, and the elephant in the room is what if Jeff Lebby leaves for a head coaching job in the next year?
Sure.
What do these quarterbacks end up doing? And Josh, I don't know if you have any insight on that, but that's kind of in my head is if OU has the type of season that we think they might have this year or next year, and Jeff Lebby leaves in, say, 2024, 2025, you have to wonder what does happen to that quarterback room, I guess.
Oh, you would have to. I think, I think the first instinct is, well, what's happening with Jackson Arnold? I think at that point, Jackson Arnold is knowing, if it's next year or if it's 2 years, he either is the expected starter or he is the starter. And it's pretty unlikely you'd walk away from a situation like that, especially at that point. Arnold's had time to build up relationships with a bunch of other guys. But as far as the recruits, Michael Hawkins, I mean, I feel like his connection with Oklahoma is largely about Oklahoma. I mean, don't get me wrong, he and Lebby are close, and Hawk and Lebby, Hawk being his father, senior, he and Lebby played together. So there is a long-lasting relationship there for sure. But I feel like that would be able to weather the storm. Samaj is a guy that I wonder a little bit about. Would he feel differently? Because he has no clear tie to Oklahoma. There's no obvious reason that OU should be the place for him. But it would obviously depend on where Lebby goes. I mean, if he goes to, I don't know, just throwing out an idea, Minnesota, is that going to be any more appealing than learning a new offensive coordinator and going to the SEC and playing for Oklahoma? I don't know. And then with Sperry, the kid's moving to Oklahoma. That would be real hard for me to be like, okay, and now he's moving to Minnesota to go play, so his family can be close to Jeff Lebby and the Gophers. I don't know. That's a little tough for me to believe, and I think that's it. You never know. I mean, quarterback recruiting is just chaotic in general, but Samaj would be the one that would make the most sense to me. Maybe he looks around a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that's years away, and also
Sure.
I mean OU has shown that they don't want to lose Jeff Lebby, so there's a very good chance Jeff Lebby's here for the next several years.
Yeah, if obviously, who knows what's going to happen in the way that the landscape of college football changes overnight, almost daily. Who knows what's going to happen out there? But I would be surprised if Jeff Lebby at least didn't. God, I hate even speculating on this, but like got through Jackson Arnold's era, whatever that may be, however long that is.
It would have to be a heck of a job to leave.
Yeah, and I think that rightfully so, they're going to have to improve offensively. That's another thing, but I do think that Jeff Lebby is in line to be a head coach at some point in the next, I don't want to say decade. That seems like a long time. Next 5 years, whatever.
Yeah, I would say if within 5 years, he's probably a head coach somewhere.
Sure. That kind of, I guess, leads us into Terry Bussey. I know that there's been a lot of talk about him, the athlete number one in the class, I believe, isn't he? It's quite interesting. Just kind of, that was one of those quotes that came out, and I know On3 put out one of the graphics with it. I think that obviously we hinted at it, I believe, in the YouTube last week at the end of the week when the Kevin Sperry stuff broke, but it's rather telling. It's rather positive news on that front.
It really is. And Terry's a guy, I've been talking to him for quite a while. One of our longtime board members, a guy named Max Sooner, has been telling me, he lives out in the East Texas area and has been telling me about this kid since he was like a freshman. And so I have just kind of kept closer tabs on him than I would somebody that didn't have an OU offer. And obviously OU offered him pretty early on because he's a special talent. But a guy that has taken Timpson, a little school, like I said, just out in East Texas, to, I believe, back-to-back state semifinals. And, I mean, that's a good and talented team. But with Terry Bussey, I mean, without him, they're probably a second-round team. I mean, they're good, but he makes them a legit state championship, contender every year. So they'll make another deep run this year, I have no doubt. But with Bussey, it's a guy that, when I would talk to him over the winter and kind of in the early spring, it was just like, yeah, I know Coach Washington, and he liked LaDamian. And then I think when the change happened, it was almost like, oh, that's too much. Like I like OU, but do I like OU enough to kind of refigure out where I stand with the new position coach? Even though it was a guy in Emmett Jones that he knew a little bit, it just felt like my focus is elsewhere. But Emmett has worked really hard, really done a lot to get back into that recruitment. And I didn't give OU great chances at the start of the weekend. And I still think they trail probably A&M. That's the school that everybody kind of has their eye on with Terry Bussey. But there's a chance. I mean, like, it's not the close. I thought there's a crack at the door. Now Oklahoma's, they can walk through that door a little bit. Like there is there's something definitely good happening there. And I talked to him, and it was just him loving the staff, the kind of energy around Oklahoma, the stuff that we hear fairly regularly. And some kids really respond to it. And I think Terry is one of those kids. And he hadn't been up to Oklahoma. I think this was his second trip, if I'm not mistaken. It was his first one in quite a while. And so there's just a very different feeling when you kind of get to be up there and be around those guys. And that's why we see Oklahoma have these big bounces coming off of a weekend, because they do bring a lot of energy and they kind of get these kids into the moment. And we'll see. Like, I'd be really interested to talk to Terry like 2 weeks from now and kind of see where OU is and see if that's worn off a little bit. But as it stands right now, I think Oklahoma absolutely will see Terry Bussey again before he's ready to make a decision.
What is the big selling point there? Is it just simply like the kind of the run-of-the-mill, like the family atmosphere type of deal, or was it something more?
I think that's a big part of it. And, I'm trying to kind of sit here and think about what he and I exactly talked about. But there was definitely just and it's not just about the coaches, because like I said, that stuff's infectious. And so like when I talk to these guys, a lot of them are like, it was just the whole group of visitors. Like we all really hit it off. There was I believe it was Nigel Smith was talking about when everybody had a break, he goes, and some guys went back to the hotel room and took a nap or whatever, just kind of rested up before the night. But a lot of us just like hung out in the facilities and, played video games and, just kind of goofed around. And that's something that you hear a lot. And it used to be I felt like there was a lot more kind of downtime. And now it just seems like these guys are just having fun hanging out and being around the staff. And I think Terry was a big part of that too, is there's just a easy amount of comfort. And guys, I'm sure Emmett Jones is telling this guy, we don't have any 5-stars in this room. You'd be that guy. And I know also talking to some people, Oklahoma strictly is recruiting him as a receiver. That's where they want him. I think some other schools are kind of we might give you a shot there, but we kind of like you at defensive back, which I get the appeal. Anybody that listens knows I want to turn everybody to a defender. But a guy that plays quarterback for his high school team, for him to still have a chance to have the ball in his hand all the time, I think that has some unique appeal.
All right, guys, I know you're getting out there on the course more. You want to look impressive, and you want to look naked, basically, from the ankle down. That's why you got to go to deadsoxy.com, DEADSOXY.com, and get yourself some no-shows. New styles coming out all the time. I've got 6 or 7 different styles. Love them. The silicone beads keep them from slipping down into your shoe. And nobody sees that you got the socks on, yet you feel comfortable. You feel like you're floating on air. Also, the boardroom, same silicone technology. Keep those things from sliding down around your ankles when you're out and you got to dress up a little bit. And also the college colorways. Get some for game day. You've got some Oklahoma-themed ones as well. The Crimson Pack, 4-pack is out there. The Maker Bayfields. Just go check them out at deadsoxy.com. Use that promo code SCOOP, and you'll get 25% off your entire order, even the sale items. So promo code SCOOP, deadsoxy.com, and go stock up today on some of the best socks that you'll ever wear. And as always, stay soxy.
As far as I think if there was one thing that came out of ChampU weekend outside of maybe the running back stuff with Taylor Tatum, I think that the stuff that you go, this is the dream that you want, and especially when you're moving to the SEC, it starts up front. I think everybody knows that. It's the defensive line. So let's start getting into Nigel Smith, obviously, we have a story up on Sooner Scoop with him that you caught up with, the Melissa defensive tackle, and then obviously the big one with David Stone.
Yeah, it's just crazy when you look over that group of defensive linemen. When you look at the visit list,
the picture that they put out, Josh, with the current guys, when you see Trace Ford and you see PJ Adebore and you see Rondell Bothroyd, I think Grayson Holt was in this picture. It makes you start dreaming a little bit. This thing, I feel like when you start solidifying a defensive line with the guys that we're talking about, that's when I think almost the reality of, okay, you can start going to play with the boot. It feels like it starts up front. You get the defensive linemen, and then I'm not worried about what they're doing at linebacker. James Nesta, if Brent Venables thinks he's good enough to play linebacker, he's good enough for me. It just seems like it's so important when you're talking about moving to 2024, with the SEC and playing against the quote unquote big boys of college football. You have to have something up front.
Well, and even if you're I'm not sure about James Nesta, if the defensive line in front of him is David Stone, Nigel Smith, some mix of Jayshon Ross, PJ Adebare, Dominic McKinley, whatever else you want to put together in this class that Oklahoma has a legitimate chance with, I don't care that much. I'm not saying that you don't need good linebacker play. You do. But Brent could MacGyver some linebackers together and be good enough to probably be fine, because that offensive line is going to be so swamped trying to deal with a bunch of legitimate NFL defensive linemen. It just cannot be overstated how important that is. And talking to those guys, talking to Nigel, Nigel is usually kind of guarded and kind of won't give you too much. But some of his quotes, I don't think you have to have the rosiest crimson glasses on to be like, that sounds pretty good. when he was talking about, just because I asked him about that picture that you're referencing, and I'm, looking at it now. You've got David Stone, Nigel Smith, Ja'Shawn Ross, Dominic McKinley, Joseph Jonah Ajanye, and obviously PJ Atabari, the prize of last year's class, all kind of standing there, and it's just like, this is it's hard to believe, but it's realistic. Like, this could happen. And I asked Nigel about it, and he was like, yeah, and then you start talking, and he, they're talking, everybody calls Grayson Halton G-Baby, and they were talking about him and how good they think he's going to be. And it was like he'd say something, and then he'd kind of catch himself, like, oh, if I'm going to go there, that kind of stuff. And then you read James Nesta's comments where he's like, oh, you got a bunch of silent commitments this weekend. Now, I'm a big advocate of silent doesn't mean anything, because if you're not ready to go public, you're not committed. Like, I believe that. But at the same time, let's say you hit 70% of 10 silent commitments. That's pretty good, especially from a weekend that was as talented as what they just had on campus. So I think they're in great shape with Nigel Smith. They're in great shape with David Stone. Dominic McKinley, I continue to hear that LSU has more work to do than they might normally for Louisiana kid. And I think he and Todd Bates have a really, really strong relationship. And I asked him if Bates was the coach he felt closest to, and he kind of pulled up short of that. He was like, I wouldn't say that. But there's no question that that's a coach he really has a bond with and really likes, the values of the staff. Like, I think that's a big deal to he and his family, and that really has resonated with them so far.
It almost sounds like Todd Bates might know what he's doing.
Yeah.
I will say, like, just in the same breath, I've heard some stuff, and I'm not going to just completely disclose it because I think it's probably pretty personal for him, but I've heard some things with Derek LeBlanc that made me go, okay, I kind of understand where he's coming from. And maybe some stuff that is completely out of the coach's hands.
Yes. And again, like, the guy transferred to UCF. Like, do you really he could have went to UCF at any point last year. Like, do you think he prefers UCF? He prefers that coaching staff? No. He's closer to home. The competition level is very different. Even people can tell themselves, like, oh, there's nothing at defensive tackle at Oklahoma. UCF would trade D-tackle rooms with Oklahoma in a heartbeat. Like, in a heartbeat. It's just a very different level of expectation. So that changes the way it's viewed by fan bases and media and everybody else. So, yeah, there's a lot. But, again, Todd Bates didn't, like, people act like he just popped up out of the ground and everybody hyped him up. No, he's been a really good recruiter and a really good developer of players for a long time. I think that shows up this year. I don't know why it wouldn't. There's not a bunch of supreme talents, but I think he can make those guys into a functional defensive line group that, frankly, has a lot of depth. So they can, if nothing else, he should be able to be cycling bodies through pretty quickly. And if you can get those guys to play it, just a little above average, that can be good enough with what you have in that back seven that I think is quite good.
Josh, I know you've been pretty clear on where you stand with David Stone, but it seemed like he had another good weekend. I think he was he back again on campus this week? And, I know you've hinted at it a bit, but do you think he is maybe close to making a decision?
He took let's review the David Stone calendar. On Thursday, all three of us saw him on campus just hanging out at practice with Michael Patterson McDonald. Who is one of his best friends, along with Caden Durham. Michael Patterson McDonald, who is a guy I've had a prediction in for a long time, apparently that visit went very, very well, and there's a lot of good feelings about Oklahoma. He's going to visit UNLV this weekend, and we know guys at UNLV. There's a lot of Oklahoma connections on that UNLV staff. I don't mean to rain on anybody's parade. The idea that he's going to pick UNLV over Oklahoma, I'm going to call pretty remote. Then you throw in Caden Durham, who I put in a prediction in for this weekend.
To the Odoms. You're sabotaging their recruitment.
That's all I need is Barry Odom at my door. That's a scary individual that I don't want knocking on my door in the middle of the day. But no, and then you throw in those two guys who are probably David's two closest friends in recruiting. He was with them all weekend. I think Oklahoma's in great shape with them, as I do with David. And then his buddy from IMG, Jaden Jackson, who takes a visit from Monday to Wednesday, he comes to Oklahoma right off the heels of David's visit. David's back on campus hanging out with Jaden and Todd Bates. And I know everybody's going to say, well, Josh, he's all over Twitter saying he didn't silently commit. I'm not saying he did. I'm not arguing that with David at all. What I am going to say is you don't keep coming back to a place that's not guys, I mean, I'd like you to think through the years. And I think back to guys like Reggie Smith and some other big-time in-state guys that really went down to the wire, that were on campus anywhere close to David Stone. I can't think of many. And I can't think of one who didn't sign with Oklahoma. Again, he's going to go to Michigan State this weekend. It wouldn't shock me if he takes an Oregon trip. I think Oregon is the biggest danger to Oklahoma because of, obviously, Dan Lanning has a great track record. We know Oregon will do everything that can be done in the NIL game. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to end up at Oklahoma. I think that's what David wants, and I think that's what eventually wins out. So, what's going to be interesting is if Oklahoma can find a way to get him in the boat as soon as possible, that's huge for that class. That's when you start to, okay, now, hey, Nigel, look who you're going to be lined up next to. It's David and PJ. Okay, now Nigel's on the boat. Okay, now, Williams, Nwaneri, you start to be able to make that pitch of, it's no longer a hypothetical of what that defensive line could be. You're starting to say, look at these pieces we're putting together. You have a chance to be the guys that rebuild Oklahoma's defense. You're going to be the forefront of everything we do for the next 4 years.
Josh, do you feel good about Nwaneri too?
Well, that takes an interesting turn. It was really funny because Sunday, when reading some of the comments and hearing some people from Tennessee, I didn't think Tennessee made a big jump. I didn't get the same feeling that I did from that Oklahoma visit. When he visited Oklahoma, it was yeah, okay, that reassured a lot of things that we'd been hearing, and I was hearing a lot of positive buzz about Isaiah Mosey, who is, for those that don't know, the 2025 receiver that is Williams' teammate. And the son of Williams' head coach, Jamar, who played at Oklahoma. So you were like, okay, this is just getting more and more interconnected, and there's a lot that draws Williams and Airy to Oklahoma. Now, I believe it was either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, you start hearing word that he's going to take a visit to Georgia, and apparently didn't want the word to get out about that visit. If that's all true, and again, I'm assuming a lot. I haven't talked to him about it. I haven't talked to many sources about it yet. If that's the case, then you get worried. I've always said, when a guy wants to keep a visit quiet, that's dangerous. We'll see. But again, I knew he liked the Georgia visit. I thought they did a good job with him. I'm interested to see how he's going to treat that because, again, it feels like Oklahoma has the relationship. Oklahoma has a lot of track record of defensive linemen, even if not at Oklahoma. And Georgia obviously is rolling right now, the absolute wagon of college football. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, there's a realistic chance that Williams Nwaneri walks into Oklahoma and takes a starting job next year. That's not going to happen at Georgia. We all know it. As talented as he is, there's other guys that are similarly talented on that Georgia roster that have had to wait their turn. He'll have to wait his. I don't know how he reacts to that. So but there's also part of me that thinks could this be the last thing? He wants to see Georgia one more time and then, okay, I'm going to make my choice, or what exactly that looks like. So we'll see. There's still not concrete confirmation that he's going to take that trip, but if he does, it's that feels a little dicey to me. If he doesn't, I still feel really good about where OU is.
I know every recruiting battle's different, but man, if OU could win a defensive line recruit over Georgia, that would just be
It feels
massive.
gargantuan. I mean,
Yeah.
it feels like it'd be so much bigger, and I don't want it to be in like a bad connotation, but it seems like it would be so much bigger than it really actually is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's one of those things like because you miss Williams. Okay, great. Let's say you get Wyatt Gilmore instead, who loved his visit, and I'm considering putting in a prediction for him as well. Like I know we talked of probably a month or more ago, Eddie, about you and I both kind of hearing stuff that Oklahoma's going to sign not just like a good defensive line class, but a huge defensive line class with 6, 7, 8 guys. They are working those numbers hard and really want to flip that room over. So Gilmore is a guy that would make a lot of sense. Is the difference between Wyatt Gilmore and Williams Neri going to be the difference in an SEC championship? Probably not. But go get them both. Like that. It's like let's let that can work itself out on the field, and you'll be in good shape. So.
I just kind of feel
again, I like where it's trending, but we've been here before. OU's going to have to close these guys.
Yeah, and I know that like they've been here before. They haven't been able to truly get over that hump as far as the defensive line recruiting goes. But just like the thought of going out and getting a couple 5 stars and how much easier they make a life for a really good linebacker. Like I think that as the defensive line started to play better a year ago, you saw things starting to come on at least a little bit towards the end of the year for somebody like a Danny Stutzman. I just feel like they go such hand in hand as far as making the defense better that you need to start somewhere. And I think that is, obviously the defensive line is where this thing kind of needs to really, truly make a turn and begin before they get to the SEC.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, that is the spot where they are clearly deficient by that league standards. Right. Everything else, you're like, okay, you can win with a receiver group that's not elite, or you can, there's a lot of answers that can work. But that defensive line, that's not going to play in the SEC. They've got to get elite bodies there.
And it's not to say that like they don't need elite bodies at cornerback either. But when you see somebody like a Gentry Williams, like we ran into last week at camp, it's like I told you guys, I don't remember a cornerback looking like Gentry does right now in the last couple years or handful of years. And I know that they've sent some guys to the league, but at the same time, it just kind of highlights where this thing is going. And if nothing else, too, and I was talking to a buddy about this the other day, for them to continue to recruit at such a high level, coming even off of the 6 and 7 season, like I can get buying into a program that is trying to turn around or whatever you want to call it, coming off of a 6 and 7 year. For them to keep that class together, that told me something, and for them to be able to continue to do it even without having played a game and improved. I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to believe something that's not there, but it does make you feel good about the direction that this thing is headed.
Well, and Josh mentioned closing on these guys. I think a large part of that this year is winning.
Sure.
I mean, go win on the football
Sure.
field, and that will help land a lot of these guys. I mean, I don't know if Josh, I'm sure you feel the same way, but that to me, I mean, we know these guys are great recruiters. The guys that came over from Clemson, I mean, they landed great players at Clemson, but if you can go out and win this year, that's only going to help you more with a lot of these guys.
Guys, somebody asked me in the board chat, let's say OU's 9-3 last year. Are some of these guys in the boat, or is the class look a little different? I 100% think so. And I think there are guys still out there that maybe even have committed elsewhere or are, playing a little hard to get, I guess, with Oklahoma right now, that if Oklahoma can go out and start 5-0, 6-0, which we all agree with their schedule, they should. I mean, there's no reason to walk into the Cotton Bowl not undefeated. If that can happen, you might see some guys that OU fans have written off or, seem like long shots could turn. And even let's say Georgia lands Williams Neri. Like, let's say they pull off a shocker this weekend, but Oklahoma goes out and starts 5-0, and Georgia starts a bunch of sophomore defensive ends that are going to be there for the next 2 years and just be absolute, monsters. who's to say that Oklahoma couldn't get back in that race with a relationship that goes back as far as his and Miguel Chavis's does? If Oklahoma can show positive momentum, they are moving in the right direction. So again, like, I know OU fans kind of feel like, oh, even when they get a commitment, like I said early in the pod, they kind of have this negative waiting for the other shoe to drop. It can go the other way too. Like, you can lose a guy and stay in that race and come back for a late win. The reason you didn't see much of that last year was because the season went so off the rails. It's hard to do that when you're playing 500 football. You're going 10-2, 11-1. You can do some big things, especially when you can tell every freshman that's going to be incoming, your first game, your first conference game is going to be in the SEC, not the Big 12.
What about Joseph Jonah Ajonye? That's a name that I don't think that we've talked about yet.
I think Oklahoma absolutely crushed that visit, and I don't think it matters. That's the easiest way I can say it. Joseph's a kid I know really well. I don't think it's not like, oh, he's made a silent commitment or made a decision or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I just think back when I went to see him, it was right after Georgia had offered him. And we did this whole interview, and it's just like Oklahoma was incredible. Like, he had almost committed, like, at more than one point there. He loved Oklahoma, and he still does in a lot of ways. But Georgia, Georgia's my dream school. And, we, again, listen to what we've talked about in the last 10 minutes. Like, we all get it. Like, that's a great defensive lineman. That school's becoming a factory for first-round picks on the defensive line. And I just think Oklahoma did everything they possibly could. He loved the visit. He had a great time. Oklahoma's just not Georgia like that, and I'm not saying that for me. I'm saying that is what's in his head. Is Georgia has it all put in place for me to be a great defensive lineman. Oklahoma, I think, can get me there. I think can do that. I know Georgia can, sure. And so I think that's the only difference, and I don't know how Oklahoma overcomes that.
ChampUBBQ, obviously a success. Anybody else that maybe we haven't discussed that you wanted to, Josh? I know that we hit on Zena. We hit on Zena in, I believe, the Kevin Sperry pod that we're going to get to here in a second. OU Texas, obviously, with his brother down in Austin right now. It still seems like even that might be kind of the same as JJA as far as they did a really good job, but there's only so much you can make out.
Yeah, I think he is the first one that comes to mind. Again, you'll hear people say, maybe he doesn't want to play with his brother, but you hear that stuff all the time, and then they usually end up going to play with their brother. So, like, I am willing to be surprised. I think that is possible, but I think it's unlikely. I think it's one of those fun stories that people, the kids and their families tell so that their kid can, that the younger son can be recruited too. And then at the end of the day, brothers want to play with brothers. So, like, I'm not judging him. I get it. Jayshon Ross has not said much publicly, but in a kind of cryptic text told me that we would catch up Thursday. I don't exactly know what that means. I don't know if that means he's going to be the next guy on board. I don't know if he's going to release a top 3 or 4. Like, I don't know what exactly Thursday means. And it may just be that's the first time he's like, okay, I can sit down with my coaches and my parents, and by Thursday I'll have something to say. So, I mean, it could be that meaningless. Like, we just don't know what that means. But and finally, a guy I did want to mention, and I know we haven't had a chance to talk about, is Casey Poe, the big offensive lineman from Lindale that just wrapped up his official visit. Actually, he's headed to LSU, I believe, as we speak. And from everything I'm told, that visit went really well. I think Oklahoma feels really positive. I don't think anybody knows. He certainly isn't like a silent commitment or anything like that. But I think Oklahoma feels they're in as good a shape as anybody. And I'm hoping to talk to Casey sometime in the next 48 hours. Like I said, he's headed to LSU, so we'll see how that all can work out. But I just go back to what he talked about when I went and saw him this spring. He just talked about how important the soul mission was to him, how much that really hit the right notes with him. And he was like, nobody else has anything even close to it. Like all the, I can play football and I can work on my future internship. I can do all these things to better my life even beyond football, and I can help people. He's a kid with a lot of faith. So I think that hits a lot of notes for him. So we'll see. But I feel like Oklahoma with him has been this school that a lot of people kind of write off, and I'm like, I wouldn't. I think Oklahoma is absolutely a contender for Casey Poe.
Texas Tech a serious threat there?
They might be. I know he likes it a lot, and God, Eddie, you've been around Joey. Joey's not a hard guy to want to play for.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Is it seems like you see the Micah Hudson stuff that's out there right now with Tech. It seems like they're starting, and maybe they've been doing it, and I just haven't been realizing. But you're right. Joey McGuire is a very dynamic, charismatic head football coach. I think that's definitely a school that seems like they are starting to maybe get their ass together a little bit. And, with the new stadium or the renovations that they're doing out there at Jones Stadium, it just seems like there's a lot of positive momentum for Texas Tech as well right now.
Oh, 100%. And, like you mentioned Mike Hudson, and somebody on the board chat was like, can OU get involved with Micah Hudson? Surely they can beat Texas Tech for a recruit. And somebody immediately responds, Texas and Texas A&M aren't having a lot of luck with it.
Yeah.
And it's just Micah has a very interesting view of how he wants to handle recruiting. He cut off OU for, I don't know a better way to say it than unique reasons. And I just think he's looking at it different. But again, Joey is incredible at making people feel like they're the only person on earth he wants to talk to. Like, sure. I remember going to his practices and Joey would be like, what do you want to hear? And he'd like this big tower of like sound system, like that's literally attached to their coaching viewing tree. And he would be like, and he would just play whatever I asked him to play. And it was I'd never seen anything like it before or since. And it's just one of those things where, like I said, he is so good at engaging you on whatever your level is. And Joey is, like I said, he's a ton of fun. He's easy to like. And it does not shock me that he's recruiting really well. He's going to steal guys from time to time from the powers just because he's that good. He's that likable.
Oh, I think that there's a reason why, even going back, what was it, when Oklahoma was looking to replace Jamar Cain, that I think that there was a lot of feeling out there like, go get Joey McGuire. Look what he's doing in Waco already. And I think he was just the tight ends coach at the time, or maybe not even had been elevated onto Baylor's staff, or maybe it had just been a year. So there is, obviously a lot of reasons, a lot of personal reasons as well, that I think we all like Joey McGuire. He's a really easy guy to cheer for. All right.
Yeah.
That kind of wraps up the ChampUBBQ, obviously. Let's get to the other big news of the week. And it's a story that you and George both worked on, here on, God, what was that, Monday? It seems like that was forever ago, but Kevin Sperry moving to Carl Albert. We did the YouTube show about it. If you haven't seen that on Sooner Scoop's YouTube channel, go check that out. Subscribe, like, do whatever, share it with a friend, share it with your mistress. I don't care who it is. Just make sure that it's getting out there. But obviously huge news for the east side of Oklahoma City.
I mean, it's going to be fun to go watch them, Eddie. I'm sure you and I and Bob will be out. I mean, Josh will probably. I think
the best part about going to cover them is you're going to only have to go for probably about a half.
Oh yeah, I mean they're gonna beat the hell out of some teams. But yeah, I mean just massive news, and it seems, Josh, and this is where I kind of want to lead off of it, because we kind of already told the story of how it all went down, but we saw as early, I think it was Monday afternoon, maybe it was Tuesday. Kevin Sperry put out that tweet, that picture of him, Xavier Robinson, Tristan Haynes, Trene Washington. Maybe there's a couple others in there, but he's already seemed to maybe start recruiting some of these guys. And we talked a little bit about it on the YouTube show. He's more of an introverted kid, at least the few times that I've talked to him, but it's clear that, he might be nudging some of those guys towards OU's direction.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, and Kevin is not like a brash in your face guy. Like, I definitely would agree with that, but he is always thinking about recruiting, because there's some guys I'll talk to and, like you working on anybody, and it's very, oh, yeah, I think the coach is going to send me a list or something, and I'll make some calls. Like, he knew the minute he committed, like, I'm working on Grayson Harris, I'm working on Desan Brom, I'm working on, if Devon Mitchell, if we need any work there, I'm going to do that. Like, he knew where he wanted to go. Michael Fasusi, the big offensive lineman from Louisville, like, he had a very clear plan of what he wanted to do. And so I don't think there's any question. And, guys, that's the crazy thing. You're going to go to Carl Albert games, and it's going to be like an IMG game because, like, I don't think IMG has 6 guys with an OU offer or 5 guys now. So it's crazy. And it's not like, you kind of taking a flyer on this guy. Every one of those guys has Power 5 offers. Like, it's not just OU loving an in-state guy. Like, it is just an absurd amount of talent at Carl Albert. And, it's funny. I've had people hit me up like, I've heard a rumor this guy's looking that direction too. Like, I don't know that Mike Dunn is, I hate to say it, Mike Dunn is done at Carl Albert. But, again, I want to be really clear. I've never gotten any vibe that this is Carl Albert driven. I know Kevin Sperry was not. Like, they called him, they contacted him. There was no pursuit there. This wasn't something – because, guys, the thing that and I talked to you guys about it when we started chasing this rumor, Carl Albert has a really good quarterback that took him to a state championship last year, and a guy named Cash Ferris that is going to go play baseball at Oklahoma State. I mean, clearly a guy that can throw the ball.
He's an exceptional baseball player.
So – like, this wasn't something like if Mike Dunn was going to go look for some help, he'd be looking for defensive linemen or I'm trying to think of a list of where Carl Albert needs help, and it's pretty short.
Yeah.
So but quarterback's not his first problem by any stretch.
Serious question: most talented OK Preps team since. I mean, obviously, like that 98 Jinx team comes to mind. They were unbelievable with Rocky and Rocky Bright, Rocky Kalmus, obviously, Matt McCoy, who ended up starting at safety for Oklahoma. There was a number of guys on that team. The Southmore team with Kendall Thompson kind of comes to mind. What was the kid's name that the tight end that ended up at Oklahoma for a cup of coffee as well?
Austin Haywood.
They were a really good team. Who else comes to mind when you're talking about, 6 offers on one team in state? It simply just doesn't happen, as maybe surprising as that may be.
It is an incredibly short list of teams that I can even think of that are close. Because, again, you're not talking about like, it's some guys with some offers. Like, these are guys with like Notre Dame offers. These are guys with Alabama offers. These are guys with big time possibilities. And it's not, the only schools that immediately come to mind for me are Jinx and Union. And I think about those late 90s teams for both those guys that were just loaded. Like, I don't think Jinx and Union have been loaded like that since that time, because Owasso, Broken Arrow, everybody else has kind of Bixby have grown up around them and kept some of that talent on their roster rather than all those guys eventually ending up in that direction. So I can't think of any that are, again, because it's not just about good. These are elite guys. And, to a man, in the right scenario, all have some degree of NFL potential. And that's a crazy thing to say for a bunch of kids, from the east side of Oklahoma City. At least, 4 of the 5 are connected over there.
I want Carl Albert and Bixby to meet in like Chandler, Oklahoma after the state championships, and winner takes both gold balls.
Maybe we'll just put it together, the Sooner Scoop Bowl.
That'd be awesome.
They would be probably – that would be a really good game. Like, that's one of the only teams right now, and at least on paper, that I would pause and think. And Jinx is obviously going to be good again.
Union's going to be good.
Going to be extremely good, very talented. Probably should have won 6A1 a year ago, or at least got to the state championship game after getting upset in the overtime game. But it is pretty impressive when you consider – and maybe it's just because – the tradition that is at Carl Albert. You look at them a year ago, I think they started 1-4, 1-3, and then all of a sudden they did what Carl Albert usually does, and they got better each week. And by the end of it, they were the best team in 5A.
They, like I said, it's hard to quantify, like how almost unfair it seems. Like it's just, and again, like I guess as I think of talented teams, I could say maybe some of those Booker T teams with like Meacham and and Mark Anderson and some of those guys that were really, really good teams that had a lot of legitimate Power 5 type talent. What's interesting, guys, is Bixby Carl Albert would be such a fun game because it's two teams that have a system. They know the system. They're established. Like their kids, like even the really good players at those schools, like they grow up dreaming of playing for those schools. Like they may know that their playing career will go beyond, but like it's a big deal even for the stars to wear that uniform. Like it means a lot. So I think that's always a lot of fun. But I saw Bixby this spring, guys. Like they on the hoof, they don't look like Carl Albert. Now I'm not saying they couldn't beat Carl Albert because they're going to come with wave after wave of good football players. Like just, I mean, not your household names, not your guys like Carl Albert has, but so many guys that will play at a Tulsa, at a North Texas, at, Arkansas State, stuff like that, like good high school football players. And it's kind of like, do this many stars win out, or is it just Bixby destroys you with numbers?
Speaking of Josh, don't know if you just saw this on Twitter or not, but Xavier Robinson just announced he's announcing his commitment June 27th.
So there you go. Running
that
back
was
Carl Albert.
Yep.
I had heard some talk of that, and I had kind of been told to keep that under my hat, so that doesn't shock me at all. I don't want to do the thing that some do, and I knew about this for a week. Like I'd heard about it following his official visit, so
Sure.
For a little bit now. But that and I
Is that
even
telling,
then it was
though?
like I think that's what's going to happen. Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. Even before he starts his Oklahoma State official visit, that he already knows he's making a decision and is going to announce it and that kind of thing. I think Oklahoma's in great shape here.
God, there's so much.
And
I truly want to see him in action this year, like almost maybe even more so than Kevin Sperry, just because of what he's going to do to people trying to tackle him. I mean, it's going to basically be a highlight just from a like Scoop HD video standpoint. Very selfishly, I just want to see him run over kids.
I want to watch him like the evaluator side of me wants to watch him against like Muskogee, where like there's good athletes, there's tough. I mean, Muskogee's tough kids. They'll stick their nose in. They'll do what they need to do or what they can do to deal with Xavier Robinson. Like I get that 100%. Del City same way, tough kids. There's a part of me that wants to watch them go play the worst team on their schedule that he'll actually play a few downs against. Like say Carl Albert's a 30-point favorite in this game, for lack of a better way to put it. And he's going to get some carries, and there's some athletes on that field that have no business trying to tackle that kid, and just watching the train wreck that's going to be, it's not any good from an evaluator standpoint, but just like you said, Eddie, the content of watching poor little Billy just get massacred by Xavier Robinson is kind of too funny to not think about.
As far as Kevin Sperry goes, and I know that we've gone into it in multiple different ways here, just the addition of him to what we've already talked about as far as the 2025 class in state. I mean, if it wasn't already maybe one of the best classes to come through Oklahoma on paper, the addition of somebody that could be a top 50 quarterback in the country or a top 50 player as a quarterback in the country, that certainly has to take it over the top, does it not?
Guys, is Oklahoma going to produce more Power 5 quarterback signees next year than any state in the country?
I think there's a
Like
very good
that
chance.
seems possible.
And the
with
crazy thing
Ficklin
is,
at Muskogee,
I still think Grady Adamson is incredible.
I have not. I don't think I've reported this anywhere, and it's not like it's breaking news or anything like that. But talking to some people around OU, there are people that I'm not going to say they don't think Kevin Sperry's better. They do think Kevin Sperry's better. But they don't think there's a big gap between Kevin Sperry and Grady Adamson. Like there are people that – I'm not saying that's Jeff Lebby. I'm not saying that's anybody. I'm just saying there are people around that program that really like Grady Adamson. And I couldn't agree more. I know I love the Ficklin kid. I know he really impressed the hell out of you and me, Eddie, this spring when we saw him.
Yes.
I've had a chance to see him once since then at the Owasso team camp, and that dude, it's easy velocity. Like, it really pops off his hand. Great athlete. There's a lot to like there. I could hear the case for him being the number 2 guy now. I'm used to talking about number 1, but I think it's him and Adamson, and then I think you've got obviously David McComb at Edmond Memorial, Grady Adamson at Deer Creek. I don't know that we've said that, and then Shaker Isaac, obviously at Union, probably most famous of the 4, to be perfectly honest. And then you add Kevin Sperry to that list, and it's just that's nuts.
Silly.
I mean, I think Ficklin, Adamson, and Sperry obviously could all end up being like top 200 players in the country. Like they have that sort of potential, and I'm frankly keep waiting for Adamson and Ficklin to start getting the notoriety I think they deserve.
The way that he handled, and I don't know, I mean, the way that he handled a playoff game as a sophomore last year, I was blown away with how well he played out at Mustang as Deer Creek went on to a state final, I believe. So it will be kind of interesting to see all that, I guess, wraps up here over the next year, 2 years for both of the, or, all the quartet of them. It seems like it's, something that just, it doesn't happen very often. And I think that is more than notable.
It's crazy that only like 2 days later his thunder was stolen because Dylan Raiola is transferring to Buford in Georgia Buford now has like 3 5-stars on their roster. I mean, like I'm talking like top 12 guys in the country with Edric Houston, Raiola, and KJ Bolden. So, and much like Kevin Sperry, going to be recruiting those guys to UGA, just like Kevin Sperry is going to be trying to get guys to Oklahoma with him.
Sure. All right. I think that will do it this week, I believe. Anything else that we need to discuss, come to the forefront with?
You guys have any tips for Jamaica?
Never been. So I could not. Love Cabo. I'm a big Cabo guy, but outside of you probably have more dealings with island life, Josh.
I've been to Jamaica once. We went there for our anniversary, I think 3 or 4 years ago. Obviously, probably a little different life than you were living that you're going to be living, George. But I would say now, where are you staying in Jamaica? Like, where's it going to be?
The Moon Palace Resort, courtesy of The Price is Right.
One of the all-time stories.
That is just fantastic.
You have a
couldn't
buddy
be
that
more
won the
jealous
showcase.
of that.
My college roommate went on the show in September of last year and won trips to Paris, Jamaica, and Turkey. And I'm going to Jamaica with him. So it's going to be awesome.
That is amazing. Now, are you staying closer to Kingston or are you over in the Grill?
We're at Ocho Rios, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I know where you're at. Yeah. We stayed pretty close to Kingston when we were there.
Okay.
I was going to tell you, bring like something to do on that ride to Montego or Negril because they are way the hell out there from the
hour and a half drive or more is what I saw. So it's a long drive.
Absolutely. So the nice part for us is because we had a friend that was like, "Where are you at?" and we didn't. I didn't know. And Tiffany was like, "Oh, no, we're real close. It's fine." And then we could see the buses going to the next place, and it was like 84 kilometers or something. You're like, "Oh, crap. That's a long time to ride on a little complimentary bus to from the airport." So
just in my experiences of being out of the country, the guys that stand on the beach with the umbrellas, those are the ones that you want to talk to, wink, wink.
Yeah, definitely.
They usually they've got a let's call it a story to tell.
Yeah, and and you usually want to hear that story.
Mm-hmm.
And
especially in Jamaica.
And then talk to them for hours, especially if they have what you're looking for. All right, I think that's going to do it. We appreciate Carey Murdoch for coming for 15 minutes. That was a lovely time He will be back. He will be the one posting it. We'll see if he listens to this. That will do it. We'll talk to you next week.